realise a lot of people who've not had the benefit of your education, when viewing that portrait for the very first time, were often heard to remark, what a pale and detached look it had got about. Follow me to Traitor's Gate. Right, ladies and gentlemen, down by the side of the most famous, more infamous gate in the world, Traitor's Gate. What I tell you the story of Traitor's Gate, having told you the story, 3 days into the story, only this time, they go with them from there, go from the election was persuaded to dress in this clothing, wasn't clothing the 3 ladies being true clothing and out of herself any time, confusing the wardrobe on duty, entered of the tower. She then emerged, weeping copiously, fell at the feet of the yeoman on duty and said, Sir, I've just said my last farewells to my husband, who is to die on Tower Hill tomorrow morning. He's now at his prayers, making his peace with his Maker. Please, I beg you, leave him alone for 1 hour. To this, the yeoman readily agreed, and Lady Nisdale, with great calmness, courage and dignity, slowly made her way from out of the Tower of London. Now, like all good love stories, ladies, it's got a happy ending. But not only did Lord Nisdale escape from the Tower, he escaped from England. Wrench made his way to Rome, where he was joined at a later date by his devoted lady wife. They lived happily together for a number of years. Lord Nisdale eventually dying of natural causes, I might add, in the year 1747, some 32 years after he should have died out there on Tower Hill. His devoted lady wife, dying, so they say, of a broken heart, falling into the grave but 2 days later. And they now lay buried, side by side, in the beautiful Fitzallen Chapel near Arundel Castle in Sussex. Now, wasn't that here and a lady? I'll give you the answer to that question later in my talk. Ladies and gentlemen, Traitor's Gate was, however, originally called, with apologies to any of our American visitors, Watergate. Built by Henry III, who required her, and of course the young Princess Elizabeth. These and many, many more unfortunate souls would have travelled downriver, from their trials at London's Guildhall and Palace of Westminster, passed through those gates, landed these steps. There they were met by an escort of yeoman warders, taken through the bloody Charlotte walls. It was a short journey out there to meet death by way of the axe. Other prisoners here, of course, took a longer journey. But of course, this was also an exit from the tower. An exit where hundreds of people were loaded on barges, ferried down the river to Tilbury, put onto rotting hulks, and set sail for Van Diemen's Land. Do we have any Australians with us this afternoon? Welcome also. City outside of these walls in 1666, the birds would have flocked here in huge numbers to build their nests in the tower's high turrets. Now remember, I said one of those turrets was rounded, I thought. Well, it was made that shape specifically to house the very first astronomer royal and his observatory. And of course, it wasn't long before the astronomer at the time went to the king and said, Sire, because of the ravens doing what ravens do, I can no longer see out of my windows or my telescope. Either the birds go or I do. Ladies and gentlemen, the Royal Observatory is some 5 miles downriver at Greenwich and has been since 1667. But the king was just about to order the destruction of the birds when an old legend was pointed out to him that if ever the ravens leave the Tower of London, the great white tower would crumble and collapse. By implication, the British monarchy would lose its crown and throne, and even far worse than those two disasters, as terrible as they would be, 42 yeoman warders would be out of a job. As a key question was, of course, indeed Charles II, who you all know had just regained the throne after 13 years of Cornwallish rule. He was taking no chances and immediately signed the royal decree that is still in effect to this very day, that we will always keep 6 royal ravens here at the Tower of London. If you go around and count them, ladies and gentlemen, you'll find that we also take no chances. We have the 6 royal ones to spare. Ladies and gentlemen, we've seen where kings and queens of England live. kindly make way for me on the right. I will take you and show you a spot where some of them tragically died. In the middle of our village green, we have our own private scaffold site. Small paved area there with the 4 black posts and the chains and the tourists. Now that is not to be confused with the public scaffold out on Tower Hill, where any Tom, Dick or Harry could lose their head to the whim of the King or Queen. Oh no, to die on that spot was considered something of a privilege. Only 6 people were executed there. I will tell you who they were, why they were executed, and indeed how they were executed when we're sat down in the warmth and comfort of the Chapel Royal. But before we enter the chapel, may I remind you it is still very much a Christian place of worship. Therefore, I respectfully request that you treat it as you would your own place of worship back home wherever you come from. Any gentleman wearing headdress, kindly remove the same before entering the chapel if your religion permits you to do so. There is, of course, no smoking, picnicking, sound or video recording or photography permitted in the confines of the Chapel Royal. So please don't do either or any of those things. When we do move, kindly assist me by filling up all seats from the front towards the rear as quickly as you possibly can. But before we do that, one final word of warning. Just inside the door of the Chapel Royal, there is a small step. No higher than that. Single-handedly, it is responsible for most of the work of the doctors in the local fracture